standard technology. And Ivan Chen, whenever I've seen him play, it was the Invitational in Seattle, now here in Los Angeles, sticking to his guns, playing something very close to the same deck that he used to win the Open in Oakland.
A Crone Crusader, as we learned that weekend in Oakland, is the card you should kill when you are playing against Jen and his Jeskai Heroic combo deck. He's playing against Trevor Eckhoff, who is playing mono red aggro. You mentioned that a lot of players were considering playing this. Trevor is one of those people.
And this is much more on the heroic tilt of the deck here. Launching creatures, a Crone Crusader, and things like Hammer Hand, Coordinated Assault.
We are going to start things off here with a favorite hoplite for Ivan Jen. Round number 1 of 15 underway here in Los Angeles. We do appreciate you joining us. 9 rounds today, 6 tomorrow, and eventually someone's walking out of here with $5,000, 25 Open Series points, and an invite to our Season 1 Invitational in Richmond. It looks like Mr. Eckhoff is off to a poor start today, however, as he's on a mulligan to 4.
And looks like turn 1, it did not even have a land.
A Crone Crusader here for Jen. A painful mana base out there with a Shift and Reef and a Battlefield Forge. But the creatures are rather powerful in favorite Hoplite and a Crone Crusader. If Eckhoff is familiar with Jen, he knows exactly what he's up to.
And I think that Jen will probably reveal soon enough exactly what's going on with his deck here. What I'm interested in is how much does Ivan try to keep concealed this game, and how much does Trevor try to keep concealed as well? It seems almost impossible at this stage that Trevor can win game 1. So does Trevor try to just see what's going on with Ivan's list, even if he doesn't draw a land, or even if he does draw a land, not put it into play to try to dupe Ivan during sideboarding, have him work with less information?
I think if you're Trevor here, you do just let Ivan play some spells. You probably don't play anything. At this point, as you mentioned, the chance of him winning this game very, very slim.
Yes.
So I wouldn't want to play too much, give away too much information. I'd be surprised if he does do that, as Jen does come across here for a couple points of damage. You saw God's Willing be cast on the Crone Crusader. That's why the Soldier token's out there and attacking. Eckhoff has drawn a card for the turn. Don't know if it's a land or not, but he is thinking something over here.
I believe he did draw a mountain. And now he's got to contemplate. What do I play, or do I even play anything at all? Because these heroic tilting builds of mono red aggro, very bad at playing from behind. Even if Trevor has a reasonable hand, just the generating tokens off of a Crone Crusader is very hard for his deck to beat.
He's giving this a long thought, too, which makes for an interesting kind of decision here. He's going to play a mountain. I guess the question now is, what spell does he play? Because if he plays a card like Fire Tongue Crusader, it's a dead giveaway of what he's up to.
Exactly.
He'll play a Crone Crusader of his own. And now he will pass the turn back over to Jen. Jen with her Attraction Helix in hand. He'll draw a card. Copy of Mystic Monastery he'll put into play. Favorite Hoplite and a Soldier token will come into the red zone. Ivan's draw not that explosive given what his deck is capable of.
Yeah, you can see that he has Ascendancy in hand, but did not have the third land on time.
Yeah, 2 copies of that card as now here comes the Crone Crusader. Would be very surprised to see Jen block here with his own Crone Crusader, a card that he values very highly in his deck, but he will make the block. We'll see if there will be an effect before damage. There will be a copy of God's Willing. That, of course, will trigger the Crusader's Heroic, means a Soldier token will be entering the battlefield, and you have to imagine he'll be naming red here.
Yes. It's just an attempt to get the Crusader off the table for free in a spot where Ivan's mana is going to be tied up for the next couple turns, and God's Willing won't be easy to hold up. There's also an argument for, if you're on Ivan's side of the table, just saying, I don't care if I get blown out here by a removal spell in response, because I'm so far ahead, and I just want to see as many cards out of Trevor's deck as possible before we move on to the sideboard.
I'd like to know if he's playing Wild Slash or not.
Exactly. And Ivan's so far ahead that even if he gets hit with a Wild Slash there, it doesn't really matter all that much.
Springleaf Drum comes in. Here's Jeskai Ascendancy. And if you watch the coverage in Oakland many moons ago, you know where this leads if he gets to untap.
Yeah. Helix in hand, so he's got the combo all rolled up. The question is, again, does he even show Trevor that that's an element of his deck? The Springleaf Drum probably a giveaway that there's an infinite combo here, though not necessarily 100% sure.
Springleaf Drum does not really imply that he's looking to do anything fair, that's for sure. There's a Searing Blood. Well, take care of the Crone Crusader. Eckhoff putting up a little bit of a fight here. He'll get in here with his Satyr Hoplite, too.
But now the shields are down, and I think we're going to see Ivan do his little dance here.
Jen will show Retraction Helix right away. He says, I'm going to have a bunch of fun. He's going to explain exactly how this works, which of course means that he can just continuously do this, bounce the Springleaf Drum, replay it, untap all of his creatures, make them very large, draw a whole bunch of cards, and attack for a whole bunch of damage. Ivan Jen going to win game number 1 here over Trevor Eckhoff. Jeskai Heroic combo up a game very quickly over Mono Red.
Yep, he uses the Retraction Helix to graft tap to bounce a non-land permanent to one of his creatures, uses a different creature along with Springleaf Drum to generate a mana, uses the creature with Retraction Helix on it to bounce the drum, uses the mana floating to cast the drum again, untapping of all his creatures, rinse and repeat, trigger Ascendancy as much as you want, grow your team to infinite, and win the game from there.
It sure is a blast.
Yeah, for those of you who have not seen the actual combo before, that's how it works.
Well, Trevor Eckhoff and Ivan Jen will go to the sideboards. We will start with Mono Red and see what Eckhoff has to bring in here against Jen.
Some good action here. 2 copies of Harness by Force, 3 copies of Peak Eruption, 2 copies of Scouring Sands, 2 copies of Searing Blood, 3 copies of Eidolon of the Great Revel, and 3 copies of Goblin Rabble Master. So I really like Eidolon of the Great Revel in this matchup because Ivan, of course, is playing with a bunch of cheap stuff. Even in spots where Ivan is trying to go infinite, Eidolon of the Great Revel could be prohibitive. I think the 2 copies of Searing Blood and the 2 copies of Scouring Sands, also nice upgrades for Trevor.
Other side of things here for Jen. 3 Lightning Strikes, 2 copies of Seeker of the Way, 2 Erase, 3 Glare of Heresy, 2 Negates, and 3 copies of Mantis Rider. I don't know how much he wants to change. I think that, given what he saw, it's not a dead giveaway that it's Mono Red deck, but I think it's a giveaway enough. I think the Searing Blood's the one that's really the tipping point, where Seeker of the Way probably comes in.
I think so too. I think you might see the Lightning Strikes come in as well to give himself a little bit extra removal. What I'm curious about is, does Ivan leave in the combo? Because his deck is set up to do a lot with Jeskai Ascendancy just for value, he does have the option on bailing on Springleaf Drum and Retraction Helix in matchups where maybe he doesn't want to draw dead cards, maybe he's worried about the combo being broken up at instant speed, and Mono Red, of course, with Wild Slashes and Searing Bloods, definitely the type of deck to do that. So I'm really curious to see, does Ivan keep the combo intact, or does he just become a Ascendancy token deck, rather?
Well, those are the options there for both players, and we will see what they like to go with here for game number 2 in just a moment. We will discuss the chat being back here on twitch.tv/SCG Live. You can join the feature match area actually right now.
Yeah, you can hop in, though if you're not a subscriber, you are in slow mode chat, which means that you can post only once every 2 minutes. For a subscription of only $4.99 a month, you get access to unlimited posting in the chat room, plus custom emoticons and badges.
Of course, we do have our emoticons, myself, Patrick, Matthias, along with our Jetpack Penguin and our Slow Play Turtle. Join the feature match area today, twitch.tv/SCG Live. And of course, we do appreciate you joining us early this morning. I guess early on this side of the country.
It's not early at all.
it's early. Coffee guy.
Dude, I am
You're
charged up.
You're a bundle of energy.
I'm charged up, man. Didn't have to fly yesterday whatsoever. Got to hang out with some friends, have a lot of fun yesterday evening, but still, much easier than traveling on an airplane.
You're no longer under the weather, it seems.
A little congested still, but mostly fine.
Okay, you've passed that over to me, a transfer of disease, much appreciated.
It's how you know we're friends.
That's how this works.
Sharing is caring.
Yeah, I have to slog through your rubbish. Thank you so much. It is very much appreciated. But I will make it. I will make it. There's nothing a little modern medicine can't take care of, right?
Right.
There you go. That and a couple bottles of water, and we'll be good to go.
Mm-hmm.
See if Ivan Jen can keep it going here. Made the trip here from Oakland to do battle. Loves his deck, of course. Standard Open champion. One of the most impressive displays, if not the most impressive display last year on the Open Series with his dominant victory in Oakland.
Yeah, it was one of the most memorable tournaments I can recall covering because the deck was so far ahead of its time. And we take a lot of what the Ascendancy deck can do for granted now because we've seen so much of it. But Ivan's build, particularly with the combo rolled in, was really, really impressive. We watched him win games where he didn't have the combo, and Ascendancy just did a lot of work for him. We also saw him win games where he had no board besides Ascendancy when his opponent passed the turn, and through Raise the Alarm and the combo, was able to generate a kill out of nowhere. So he demonstrated the whole range of what his deck is capable of, from just a token value win all the way up to going infinite. It was very impressive.
It was quite the display in Oakland. Some best of SCG Live moments certainly do involve Ivan Jen. We'll see if he can make another moment here during this match, or hopefully over the course of the weekend as we make it through our 15 rounds of standard action.
This is a bit of a hike for Ivan. I believe he's a player from the Oakland area, so made the about 6-hour drive down to Los Angeles.
Well, looks like both players are happy. Trevor with a few more cards. Actually gets to play a land on turn 1. How lucky.
Pretty big improvement.
Satyr Hoplite will get his second game off. Mystic Monastery, start here for Jen. Eckhoff will draw. Now we've got ourselves a Dragon Mantle. That'll trigger the Heroic on the Hoplite. Of course, you get to draw a card from the Mantle as well, so a good start here for Trevor.
Very important for him to get his creature out of removal range as fast as he possibly can.
See if he does have a second land to play as well. Looks like he does. There's a mountain. Let's see what the follow-up will be. At the very least, he could pump with his Dragon Mantle, but I imagine he wants to do a little bit more than that.
Well, he may want to use something like Coordinated Assault or Titan Strength to pump up his creature a little bit further, but he also may want to just dump mana in the Dragon's Mantle. So he's got to figure out, what the priorities are. I like playing the Hammer Hand here, as now he has a 4/4 creature, means that even if Ivan has a follow-up here of Lightning Strike, which is reasonable to anticipate, can't get the Hoplite off the table.
Jen will play Battlefield Forge for his second land. As he demonstrated during the last game, this deck does have a pretty painful mana base. It's trying to do some rather broken things. He has to pay the price to do that. He'll have to take one right now, for example, just to cast an Necron Crusader, but he's got 2 of those on the table before passing the turn back.
And now, it's an issue of, can Trevor follow up with enough Wild Slashes and Searing Blood type effects? That's not bad either.
Scouring Sands?
It is in the board. Thought he would bring it in, and quite awesome there.
Now, Scouring Sands, of course, is a card that when we see mono red decks, we oftentimes see that in the sideboard. But rarely do we ever actually see it come in or actually play an effect or a role in a matchup. But the 1 damage it deals to each creature your opponent controls certainly did matter here.
I think, some decks that have a slightly higher curve probably go to Arc Lightning for this style of effect.
Yep.
Trevor playing only 19 lands. The 3rd mana on Arc Lightning, a pretty big cost. So as an anti-Raise the Alarm and anti-Hordeling Outburst measure, Trevor instead going with Scouring Sands.
It's Meletis Astronomer. Along with the Scribe from Temple of Triumph and a passing of the turn. Now, if you did join us during our Season 4 Invitational in Seattle, you saw Matt Nash try to use this to great effect in Jeskai Ascendancy combo, just like Ivan Jen is trying here. Nash had a pretty positive record with that deck, not exactly what he was looking for, but he said the Astronomer certainly was good for him all day.
Exactly, and that was the classic combo build of the deck.
Lightning Strike's going to get that off the table, though. And Eckhoff with a much better start this game than the last one. He will attack for 4, pump with the Dragon's Mantle. That'll make an attack for 5, and Jen is in some real trouble here.
Trevor has to really respect the Astronomer there to make that play, because the alternative is he can just go, I'll attack. Most likely, Ivan says no blocks. He can't really afford a chump block there. You dump all your mana in the Dragon's Mantle. That moves Ivan down to 3, and then you have a Lightning Strike in your hand.
Well, here's a card that Jen didn't have access to before that you have to imagine is pretty good in his deck. It's a copy of Monastery Mentor.
I mean, this is a card that's helpful when he's trying to combo off, also a card that's helpful when he's just trying to play a value game. So I imagine this card slots right in, though for 3 mana, I imagine there's only so many copies he can really play.
Just one in the main deck. Another new card that he does have is Soulfire Grandmaster, just one of those as well. So perhaps some experimentation here for Jen.
If I'm Trevor here, I just move to combat and attack as the start of the turn.
Yeah, sure, he's got a block.
He's got a block. See what's going on. If you're worried about trying to kill this before combat, you can just move it and attack.
He'll go reach in front of those mountains. It's a copy of Hammerhand. That'll make it so the creature can't block, of course. It'll also trigger Heroic on the Satyr Hoplite.
I mean, you can see the reservation on Trevor's side here. If there's a God's Willing in Ivan's hand, this turn might get pretty bad.
Retraction Helix isn't bad.
This is...
Now, it does have Summoning Sickness, so it's
right.
not a complete blowout. But he does get to make a Monk token and potentially block depending on what's in Eckhoff's hand. Lightning Strike is going to take care of that. But here's the Monk token, there's the block.
Yep.
And now there's a passing of the turn. Jen will draw, and he will pick up his card. So Trevor Eckhoff will win game number 2 against Ivan Jen, and we'll be headed to a 3rd and final one here.
Pretty interesting turn for the Trevor there, because because he had a second copy of Lightning Strike in his hand, I think the play he initially made the previous turn makes a little bit more sense to me, because the risk of not Lightning Striking there is that Ivan does chump block. You may not get a better spot for that Lightning Strike to get cashed in. The Lightning Strike is basically guaranteed to be worth the 5 points of damage the turn that he cast it. There's no guarantee the same situation presents itself down the line.
Well, both players going to shuffle up very quickly here for game number 3. Neither player going back to the drawing board, so we will very quickly talk about SCG Game Night. February is almost over, but there's still time to get mittens.
Yes, or boots, or whatever you want to call the wolf, but is available for February here. We send out these kits every month. New set of pins and foils to give out to your players. You can set up game night however you want to, just make it a consistent day of the week, but whichever format, sanctioned or unsanctioned, just get players in your store for some fun and friendly magic.
We'll have new stuff coming for you in March. Too late to sign up for that March kit, but if you do want to sign up for April, definitely head over to StarCityGames.com or contact your organized play representative. It's not too tough. And we'll have probably something spicy for March.
We always do.
Yeah, no idea what it's going to be, but I imagine it'll be a real doozy. Still no hippo yet, though.
Yeah, shockingly enough, no hippopotamus.
We're bad negotiators.
On this front, yes, absolutely.
I think we did this poorly. We'll have to... 26, geez, 26. I was going to say 2015. 2016 is a long way away.
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
It's not so far away, and when it comes to renegotiating, it's not that far away.
I suppose.
Not that far away.
You know, it's 10 months, man. Don't make 10 months sound like it's short. Okay, 10 months is a long time. 10 months better be a long time.
Flew right by last year.
That's true. So Ivan Jen, during Season 4, Standard Open champion, looking to get his tournament off to a fantastic start here in Los Angeles. Trevor Eckhoff looking to play the role of spoiler with his mono red aggro deck. A little bit of more of a heroic slant in his deck, or at least that game. But he does have cards like Fire Crusader and Monastery Swiftspear. Also has Frenzied Goblin too.
Yeah, there's a range, right? You know, there's some mono red decks that play, let's say, Goblin Rabble Master. That's sort of signifying they're sort of a classic mono red aggro strategy. And then there's some extremely low end builds. I mean, we've seen some this year that have been crazy. One in Houston, I remember, that was just the most extreme heroic style mono red deck I've ever seen in my entire life.
12 creatures.
12 creatures and all enchantments and very few lands. Trevor's deck here is somewhere in the middle. He does play some reasonable curve. He has Rebel Masters in his sideboard. He has Lightning Strikes and Searing Bloods and Wild Slashes. He does have some creature removal, but he is playing the, Coordinated Assault, Hammer Hand, Dragon's Mantle package that you typically associate with heroic strategy. So just goes to show you there's, room for customization with these decks. Some of them are very hard to pigeonhole into a particular archetype or strategy, because Trevor's has elements of both mono red aggro and mono red heroic.
Mono red is right on the cusp of a breakthrough here in Standard and on the Open Series. We saw last week player come up just 1 point short in Dylan Lurch of making the top 8. And we saw some of the deck in the top 16 and top 32 from the Houston results. And also when we were in a couple weeks ago, our Standard Open, where we had players start off 10-0 with the deck and unable to make the top 8 in Washington, D.C.
The Abzan deck's cutting Sylvan Caryatid and playing, Read the Bones and End Hostilities in the main. Mono Red picks up a lot from that switch.
Yeah.
Because Caryatid's one of their best cards in the matchup. Read the Bones is often uncastable, and End Hostilities can be okay in some games, but is often too slow to matter.
Monastery Swiftspear is going to start things off here for Eckhoff. He'll come across for 1 point of damage. Jen already down to 19. He'll untap his temple and take a draw. Mystic Monastery. And a passing of the turn over to Eckhoff. Eckhoff will take his draw.
And Ivan, with a creature in hand, he could cast. He elected not to cast his Hoplite, trying to set up a spot where he can protect it with God's Willing or some other effect. If he just taps out and casts his creature, it gets hit with a Searing Blood or a Lightning Strike. Ivan cannot afford those kind of exchanges. He's got to get something going.
Every time we've watched him play this deck, he has certainly picked his spots very well.
Yeah.
Very patient instead of just putting a creature out there to get killed. Eckhoff going to decide how he wants to maybe lead things off here. You have to imagine he's got a few creature enchantments, maybe another creature there in Monastery Swiftspear, so he'll play that. There's a mountain. And actually just some simple attack for 2. Let's make it a little more there with the Titan Strength.
This puts it up to 7.
Yeah, it's a good turn.
A lot of damage. Now, Trevor is taking his time on a lot of these turns. Part of that is a consequence of He just doesn't know for sure what's in Ivan's deck. Ivan could very well have Wild Slash in his deck. So even though that play looked really obvious, why is Trevor thinking so long? He does not know for sure what's in Ivan's list.
Wild Slash adds a new dimension to things.
Yeah.
That is for sure a temple of enlightenment here for Jen. He will scry. That top card's going to go to the bottom. This is a favorite hot play. And he will pass the turn back over to Eckhoff. Eckhoff will draw.
And I think Ivan has to play as conservatively as possible here with the Hoplite, not engage in combat at all, because he has Retraction Helix in his hand too. So he absolutely needs to untap with a creature in play that does not have Summoning Sickness.
So we can get the most out of that card.
Yeah, and then he can start coming back a little bit. And I think that Ivan has to play the game that way, even if it means taking some licks here and going pretty dangerously low, because his hand does not do very much until he untaps with a creature in play.
One thing to keep in mind, too, is that if he's playing against what he's seen so far, really the only burn spells he's seen is Lightning Strike and Searing Blood. Clearly playing against a lower to the ground mono or aggro deck, so it of course makes you wonder if you're Jen, how much reach does the opponent have? Stoke the Flames, and what other burn spells are there?
Right.
Eidolon the Great Rebel, a pretty good one against Jen's deck.
Yes, this is one of Trevor's sideboard is really good for this matchup. Eidolon the Great Revel is not a card that Ivan wants to play against.
We'll see at God's Willing here. This may be in response to the Eidolon.
Trevor has no mana available, so this is a safe spot here. Ivan's got to be worried about his Hoplite getting killed in response, so Trevor tapping out is a great window for him to resolve this God's Willing, blunt Trevor's offense for this turn, and also not cast a spell while Eidolon's on the table.
No good attacking right here from Eckhoff, it seems. So the timing of that God's Willing, very, very important, as now there is a land. Mountain will come into play. But favorite Hoplite is a 2/3 with protection from red. And the damage it would take would be reduced to 0 anyway.
But there are some freebies here that Trevor can have to make an attack. For example, if he has Dragon's Mantle, he can put on something, draw a card, both of his Swift Spirits become 2/3s as a result, and he can get in for 2 points of damage.
Yep.
All these points really add up when Trevor has the Eidolon in play, because Ivan's deck is not well suited to play Magic with an Eidolon in play. So if you can get Ivan low enough, it may be impossible for Ivan to go off even if he has the full combo.
There's Hammerhand. Eckhoff will have to take some damage to cast it thanks to his Eidolon. But this is an example of exactly what you talked about, which means that this is an attack he can make, and also, of course, the Eidolon is going to get haste thanks to the Hammerhand. So that's what Jen will be blocking. He'll have to take 4 points of damage, however. So still a good turn there for Trevor.
Yeah, it gets him down to 8, and again, with Eidolon the Great Revel in play, 8 is very low for Ivan.
Hammerhand has a lot more text than you would think.
It's a weird common. That's a freaking weird common.
Yeah.
And it's only an enchantment instead of an instant because of the +1/+1 clause. You
Yep.
could just make that a spell because the other clauses on that card are only for this turn. So it's an enchantment just because of the +1/+1.
+1/+1, creature can't block, and haste. All rolled into one package.
It's an odd duck. But it's sweet for constructed. It just does enough little stuff where it's good enough to play. And I like cards like that.
No, I think it's a great addition for this deck. I believe I forgot that it even gave haste, because rarely do we see an interaction come up. Oftentimes we see a player just play it on a creature that can already attack to give itself +1/+1 and make it so one creature can't block. We're going to go back Eckhoff's way. Jen with 3 mana available. Now, he's certainly capable of doing quite a few things. That Eidolon makes things pretty difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Ivan just has to Retraction Helix the Eidolon off the table or Lightning Strike it or something before he can really even do anything at all. He's on 8 right now. He's only got 1 blocker against 3 creatures. So he's probably going to be taking some chip shots this turn no matter what's in Trevor's hand. It's a tough spot for Ivan.
Well, we'll have to sit here and wait patiently and see what Eckhoff can do. Never a great feeling playing against mono red. He's going to start off with a Fire Drink Crusader. Take 2 to cast it. It's probably the least impressive of the plays, I think, as far as Ivan was worried about.
Well, this might mean there's some more Hammerhand action.
Just a passing of the turn. Very interesting.
It's possible that Trevor respects the possibility of Retraction Helix so much in this spot that he's not willing to go into combat here because the Eidolon's going to grow as a result of this Retraction Helix.
I can respect this.
Yep. Because Trevor knows that next turn he just gets to untap and say, here's Eidolon again.
Yep.
Do you have a counter spell? Probably not with the way your deck's set up.
However, this opens the door up for Jen a little bit here to deploy some creatures. So he'll start with an Akron Crusader. Does have another Crusader in hand, also Defiant Strike and a Retraction Helix. So some good cards over there, but he'll just pass the turn back. Eckhoff will draw. Is it time to redeploy that Eidolon?
I like it as the first order of business because Ivan will respond with whatever tricks. You get more information about whether or not you even want to go into combat here. If Ivan just says that resolves, depending on the rest of Trevor's hand, he may be willing to go into combat. Because if Ivan had anything that influenced combat, if he had anything he wanted to play in response, he probably would have seen it before the Eidolon. So I like opening up the turn there if Trevor can afford to do it, because you get to see what's going on Ivan's side of the table.
So now these players are going to play a very interesting portion of the game. Trevor needs to figure out how he wants to use his Eidolon, because clearly Ivan's scared of it. So how do I sequence my turns? Ivan has a couple of good cards in his hand, Defiant Strike and Retraction Helix, so how does he want to use those spells? Eckhoff off to a nice lead here. He's at 16 life, plenty of life, but he also has to wonder, is my opponent himself the infinite combo in his deck?
Yep.
I just saw it the first game.
I mean, Retraction Helix is pretty bad against Trevor. It's not a dead card, but it's pretty bad.
But necessary.
Well, assuming the combo is no longer in the deck. Yeah. Hard for me to buy.
A third Monastery Swiftspear. And the way that Eckhoff has lined those up, those look like they want to come into the red zone.
And this is really bad news for Ivan if Trevor's considering going into combat without playing the Eidolon first. Because whatever he has left over in his hands got to be really good to justify that.
Well, perhaps he's changed his mind. There's Eidolon. I think we're going to see a response here from Jen.
Yeah.
He'll start with Defiant Strike. That'll target a Chrome Crusader, which means a Soldier will come in. He'll also get to draw a card, as that card does cantrip. So that's step one. Picked up a copy of Battlefield Forge to go along with another Crusader and a Retraction Helix. He could cast Retraction Helix right now before the Eidolon comes into play, trigger Heroic on one of his creatures, and then still has the ability to bounce the Eidolon.
Yep.
And that's what he's going to do. So he'll play Retraction Helix, target the favorite Hoplite. Of course, Heroic will trigger there, so Helix does resolve, and that text is grafted onto that creature. Eidolon now resolves. No damage, of course, dealt to Jen. And now we'll see how Jen wants to attack. I imagine his attacks right now, or excuse me, Eckhoff, how he wants to attack. I imagine his attacks right now are not very profitable.
They're not, but there is some argument of just getting in whatever damage you can here with Eidolon as part of the equation. Because if you're able to get Ivan down to 4 here, it means the Eidolon's even more prohibitive going forward.
There's a Fire Drink Crusader. Eckhoff will have to take 2. His hand is empty. Now he's got a card back in it, but it's just that Eidolon that we know about. So Jen will draw. It's a copy of Jeskai Ascendancy.
Huge draw.
That's a pretty important one. And now an Akron Crusader. And a passing of the turn. Eckhoff going to very quickly untap. Eidolon in hand, he'll take a draw step. Looks like he picked up a copy of Akron Crusader of his own. Now we know that Jen's deck can do some very broken things with Jeskai Ascendancy in play. Right now, all he has in hand is the Battlefield Forge. Eckhoff with no good attacks will just pass the turn back. Now it's on Jen to draw something spicy. Looks like it may have just been another copy of Battlefield Forge. He'll just pass the turn. So we head back Eckhoff's way. Eckhoff, not a lot of lands in his deck, only 19. So the likelihood of him drawing lands seems pretty low, but he'll just pass 2.
Trevor could have made some pretty ambitious alpha strikes here. I think last turn and the turn previous. I think his logic right now is I don't think Ivan can beat the Eidolon. I don't really want to risk some random trick blowing me out in combat. And he's willing to wait. He has 2 copies of Stoke the Flames in his deck, some Searing Bloods. If he's able to get in a couple extra points of burn here, then the Eidolon may just become a full lock. And I think he's trying to set up that spot.
Well, for now, we're just playing draw go. Jen will play a Temple. He'll look at the top card. That top card very quickly becomes the bottom card. He'll pass the turn back. Eckhoff's going to draw a card now. Both of these players not doing much of anything. But their hands, I imagine, are a little stronger than they let on.
Well, you know, this is an interesting spot here when you're in Trevor's seat, because you have the feeling that Ivan can't break out of this, but you don't know for sure. And now with a free spell here and an extra creature, I think there's a good chance we see Trevor make his move.
Especially with the prowess triggers as well.
Yeah, this is a lot of damage coming through, and if you can get Ivan to 2 here, that's such a huge deal, because then it's almost impossible to imagine him winning.
On their Scouring Sands.
This is not bad either.
Yeah. That'll force Jen's hand. And Scouring Sands is going to get the job done as Ivan Jen had nothing left. So Trevor Eckhoff is going to win this game and this match here over Ivan Jen, the Standard Open champion from the Open Series in Oakland. Starts his day off with a loss, unfortunately. Mono Red Aggro wins the match here over Just Guy Row combo.
Very impressive comeback there for Trevor, recovering there from a mulligan to 4 in game 1. I think the matchup is solidly in Trevor's favor, especially post-board. You saw both Scouring Sands and Idol on the Great Revel make an enormous impact in games 2 and 3.
Cards that I imagine Jen was not really prepared to play against this weekend. You know, when you think about the meta game and what happened last weekend in Houston, those aren't cards you had to play against.